Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx back in the DJcity lockdown lab. This is like my fourth attempt at trying to do this video because every time I've done it before, I'm doing it as live because that's kind of the spirit of these devices, but it's ended up being super long, super technical, unnecessarily so. So this time I'm going to try and get it done in a concise fashion, going to explain why these might well be the dream solution for a lot of you trying to do live streams right now, like they kind of are for me. The thing is, you'll know very quickly if these devices are going to be for you, because you need certain things to get the most or indeed anything out of them. Otherwise, there's no point because the investment would be massive. So what we're looking at is HDMI switches designed for live streaming. Blackmagic, they have their ATEM range. It's like hardware switches for broadcast, live TV, things like that. They can cost thousands of dollars for the switcher. But the technology is effectively the same. They've just brought it down to a more kind of prosumer level here. So it's all HDMI instead of SDI inputs, which are like the pro level, low latency inputs. We've got HDMI here instead, and it runs on exactly the same software as the really high end stuff. That's the really interesting thing. But it's not really about software as such on a kind of basic level. So we have the ATEM Mini that came out towards the end of 2019 for $300 thereabouts, street price. And then we have the ATEM Mini Pro, which came out in the last few weeks. I actually heard about it during a Q&A live stream here on DJcity. People told me about it while the stream was happening. They were announcing it. And so I've managed to borrow one of those from Blackmagic for review. This ATEM Mini, I bought it. I actually bought it before the lockdown thing started, just before, because I've been looking at it, eyeing it up for a while. I was like, that's the way I want to go for my streaming. That's what I need in my life. So yeah, they're HDMI switches, okay, and they take multiple inputs. It's a bit like a DJ mixer, effectively, but for video stuff. So we have 4 HDMI inputs on the back. You are limited to 1080p and 60 frames a second. So resolution of 1080p, the frame rate 60 frames a second. That's the maximum on these. You can't feed 4K in and you can't get 4K out. But for people doing live streaming, in general, 1080p is going to be where you're going to max out anyway. So I have no problem with that. But you can feed any source that feeds out HDMI. Preferably you want a clean HDMI signal without all kind of the display stuff, you know, focus and all that stuff from your camera. So if you've got a DSLR or a mirrorless camera like I've got here, or a GoPro with an HDMI output, any of those you can just plug straight into the back of this and it scales. And that's one thing it actually has over and above the more expensive ATEM hardware. A lot of it doesn't do that scaling. You have to feed it all the same frame rate and the same resolution. This thing, if you want to throw something in there at 720p, 30 frames a second, mix it up with something with 1080p, 60 frames a second, the hardware will take care of that and it will make one unified output for you. So it's basically, yeah, like a DJ mixer. We've got 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the inputs. We can switch between those. There is also a preview mode where basically you can set it to you select one as your next source and then you hit the cut button. I don't think that's really the way to go for DJs because you're just generally doing stuff on your own. You're not like having a separate camera operator. It is a really broadcast way of doing things, but me, I just stick with the cut because, yeah, I'm already DJing. I'm busy doing other stuff. I don't want to mess around doing extra button pushes if I don't have to. So we can just cut between those. Being HDMI inputs, they also carry audio. So if you have a source with audio, let's say a feed from a laptop that you've plugged in, or a media player, or a camera microphone, or a camera you can have with, you know, a line input. Some cameras have, like the GH5S, Blackmagic's own cameras. You can switch to line input on those. So you can feed audio straight in through those as well. You've got control of that audio, so you can switch them on or off in terms of each channel. So you can choose what's active and what's not, and you can adjust the volume for each one from the unit too. You've got up and down arrows to adjust that volume, which is very, very cool to just have right in front of you there on the unit. And yeah, you can choose to just do a regular cut, or you can have a mix kind of effect as well. So you can hit auto. I've got mix activated there, and I'm going to do, let's say, 1 second long, hit the next one, and it will do an automatic fade between the two. Or we can do wipes. We can do all kinds of things. Basically, there's lots of different choices that we have to go between all the stuff. As I say, generally I'm sticking to cut. It's just smoother for streaming. That just seems to be the way for me. So on top of the video inputs, we then have 2 audio inputs. Now they're marked as mic, but they can actually be switched in the software over to line level. and that just works with a stereo input. So mini jack, anywhere from a mixer, whatever you want to feed into it, just comes straight in there, and that is that. Now, there is one thing to think about with that, and that is latency. We'll talk about that a bit later on, but we'll move on for the time being. But yeah, you've got 2 dedicated audio inputs, again with volume controls, and you can switch those on and off from the hardware. When it comes to outputs, we have options, right? Basically, you've got the HDMI output on the back, and that will feed out. You've got choices. We can go to either, I'll go to my screen. On the Pro, you have this fancy multi-view, which is very useful. That's not there on the regular Mini, but it's something I kind of could live without. It's not, for me, it's not like the reason to buy the Pro over the Mini. There's another reason why you might want to do that, but it's a very cool feature nonetheless. So you have all your different inputs, and you can see everything's lined up. It's very nice to have that. You can have the program output. You can select individual channels to preview. So all of that is accessible from the body on the Pro, not so on the regular Mini, but you can do that from the software. So that's your HDMI output. That's really designed for your preview so you can see what's going on. But there's another output as well, and that is a USB connection. It's not like USB 3.1 or anything like that. It's a regular USB connection. You can feed to pretty much any computer with this, and the signal coming from that is actually just seen as a webcam. So you can run into whatever you like, whatever platform you want, even something like Skype or Zoom, and the switcher will show up as your webcam. So you go into OBS, you select it as a video source like you would any other webcam, and up it comes. So the devices themselves are doing all of the real hard work, and all you're taking into your computer is one webcam feed. And obviously you get the audio through that connection as well. And so it all comes in together, all pre-mixed. And this is why I think this is going to work for a lot of DJs in terms of kind of just holistically. Like, it just feels good to have that hardware control. It's all there in the unit, and it gives you a real advantage in terms of performance as well, because you're just feeding one feed into your computer as a webcam. And for that, you've got 2 audio inputs and 4 video inputs that you can go between. It's very, very cool when you've actually got it in use. Now, there is more you can do. That's the hardware itself, right? There's definitely more that can be done with this. We've got the ATEM software control. And as I say, this is the same software that goes across the entire ATEM range. So there are some things that are grayed out in here, which aren't available with these devices. But for me, that's no biggie. You know, it's just a case of this. It means you're getting the pro level software. So we've got basically a recreation of what we have on the unit itself. So you can see it's switching easily between the two. And then we've also got extra stuff in here which is not available. So for example, we've got picture in picture. So we can have picture in picture. Let's go back. I'll just bring up my preview so we can see, so I can see what's going on. So if we go back to channel 2 and then I hit picture in picture on, then channel 1 is going to appear there. We can select which camera goes there, and we can select what size it is and everything else. So all of that is easily done. You can choose all that within the software. And we've got more, like we can do keying. So the logos that are over the top of the screen right now, that is just it's a Targa file. It's a little bit more complex than just a regular PNG, but yeah, that's keyed out in the unit. Again, no overlays added. I'm just showing you this in QuickTime Recorder on the Mac. No, this is all done in the unit. So the unit itself is doing all of this, and you can do proper serious green screen with this. Like, as far as I'm aware, the actual keying within this is top notch. I've not really played with that too much beyond adding logos and stuff, but it's definitely something I want to explore further. And this is the case with both these units. You've got all that keying, all that power. So we'll go back to the software control. One thing you might notice is that the Mini right here, I'm just feeding the HDMI output from this one into the Mini so that I can show you that multi-view and so on. That's really the only reason I'm doing that. The Mini is connected by USB. That is my webcam into this computer. But the software control, which I've got activated on here, that's not connected via USB to the Pro. The Pro has just got an Ethernet cable going into my network. So my Mac here is on my Wi-Fi. It's not even hooked in via Ethernet. And that is talking, that is doing the control of the ATEM Mini Pro over the network. So this software doesn't add really anything in terms of stress on your computer. If you are DJing with one machine, then you can have just the remote software on there, and it's not going to add much at all. There's more, right? There's loads more in here. You've got all your keys. DVE, that's your picture in picture. Then you've got media player. So we have media player in there. Now this is only for still images. You can't bring videos in there. But you can see I've got some still images there, one of which I'm using for the key. And let's click on one of those. So let's go to starting, and now the output has switched to my stream starting. Let's switch it to stream ending, and then we can go back to camera 1, picture in picture off, and you can see this one, the one that's in the third slot, has now reappeared as a keyed out thing. It's deep, right? This is why this video is always taken so long, because you can get super deep into this stuff. One thing that I am doing here, I'm using macros. Right, if you have ever sort of worked with macros in other software before, it should be fairly straightforward. Basically, you record them. So I'm going to make a new one now. Just click on that. Plus, let's call this test and record. And now anything that I do within the switcher will be recorded within the software. And then I can save that, and I can go in, run it. And so I can have lots of things happening at once, because obviously, especially when you're DJing, you can only do one thing at a time. You don't want to have loads of stuff going on. So generally I'm using the macros, and you can control those in various different ways. For example, there is an app called Companion that will work with the Elgato Stream Deck. If you've got one of those, then you could get that involved. There's lots of ways you can control it, like remotely, but yeah, I like the macro side of things. Far too deep to be getting into here. Before we get to the output, there's one other thing that Blackmagic sent me, and that is the Hyperdeck Studio Mini. Now, this is a way of getting video into your stream through HDMI, and you can actually control that through the software as well. So basically, all of the system works together, and so we can connect up the Hyperdeck, and that's connected over Ethernet. So that's just going into your network, as is the control software, and you can actually have it launch clips when you switch over and stuff. It's super deep. I will be looking at that more. I'll do a little video about the Hyperdeck, because that actually costs more than either of these products, but it's quite intense what you can do with it. It's very, very clever indeed. So we will look at the Hyperdeck in some more detail later on. But yeah, lots of different options. Then we move on. Yeah, we've got we'll show you this one. The cameras, this is new in the latest version. You can fully control Blackmagic's own cameras. They have their line, which is the Pocket Cinema camera 4K and 6K. The only reason really I don't have those cameras is because when I needed to buy a camera most recently, I wanted a 4K and I couldn't get one, because Blackmagic have this real habit of making really, really cool products, and then they can't make enough of them, and they're always sold out. And at the moment, you might find that's the case with both of these devices. They're really hard to get. I considered myself very lucky that I'd got my Mini, and then obviously the Pro came along as well. But yeah, so I really like Blackmagic cameras. I just don't have any to demo this with. But you can control those from the app. So you can record to the cameras in like 4K or 6K in RAW, completely untreated. You can color correct them on the fly, like live within the software here for your stream, and then go back and do whatever you want with those raw files afterwards. If you've got the right lens on there, you can even zoom in and out with this software. So you can control everything, and they have like on-air lights come up on the cameras and stuff. This is full-on serious stuff, right? But it's very, very cool. So let's move on to the outputs, as I said. Now, this is where the Pro comes into play, because with the ATEM Mini, you've got basically a preview output through the HDMI. You can choose whatever you want for that, but it is just really meant for preview. And then you've got the USB, which makes it a webcam. With the Pro, we have two more options. We can live stream directly from the hardware. And I didn't think this was that exciting to me. I thought I'm always going to want to use software. There's advantages to that, and there are some advantages to using software. But I was like, no, I don't really care about that. And that's my preferred way of streaming right now, is just directly through the ATEM Mini Pro, because you're connected to a network, or you can share your connection from a laptop or whatever. This thing, you can just pop in your platform that you want, Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube by default. You can edit an XML file and add different services in. So I've had Restream in there, and it just worked perfectly going out to restream.io. And then you add in your, choose the server, you put in your stream key, choose your output quality. So that can be adjusted in the XML file as well. But the standard ones, you've got high, medium, and low. And you can also choose to go to Hyperdeck quality, which is if you're going to be recording, moving on to that next. But yeah, for streaming, you want something generally like medium is enough for most platforms in 1080. That's kind of enough for most people. And you can display the status of that at the bottom of the screen. And if you go back to the multi-view, which you've of course got on the ATEM Mini Pro, then you can see at the bottom we have our stream information. So it says where we're streaming to, how long it's been streaming for, and your data rate, and whether the stream is okay. It also caches away, so if there's a drop in your connection, it goes down, then there's enough frames stored away. Yeah, it's pretty advanced. I didn't think I'd want it. I really didn't. But now I'm like, this is the best way to stream that there's ever been. It's incredible. So you just literally hit it and off you go. Like you just start it and away it goes. So we move on to then the record, because this is where it gets cleverer still, right? So you're using the Ethernet port to stream with. You're not using the USB. The USB is only for webcam going out to a computer. So that frees up the USB port, and you can use the USB port for recording directly to, I've got an external SSD here. You can just record to a flash drive. Like you've got a decent flash drive with reasonable speed on it, even a spinning hard drive, you can just record to that straight away. So you've got the same quality as what your stream is. You can't record in a higher quality or anything like that. You have to record in the same quality. It's only got one output level at a time, if you like. But yeah, it'll go straight out from there into that drive, saves it, record, H.264, and that's it. You've got a lovely clean copy of your stream there. It's fantastic. It's really, really good. And if you want to do just recording, so if you want to set up and record a multi-camera kind of video live without streaming it, that's fine. You can choose the hyperdeck quality, and yeah, you get a nice high quality recording directly to a USB stick. And that, I've only ever used USB sticks with this until now. Like, this is very, very cool stuff. So for me, that extra is worth it. I don't regret buying the Mini for $300. I'm happy I bought that. But if I was buying one today, I probably would buy the Pro, because actually streaming directly from the hardware, it just takes a whole lot out of the equation. And that's why it's so good. Like, because you're running the software control app is just over the Ethernet as well, so over your network. There's no demand there. Like running something like OBS and Serato or something at the same time is a really demanding thing to do. But if this unit is doing everything, it's doing all the switching, all of the control of your sources, all your audio and everything else, and recording at the same time, all your computer is doing remote control for it, then that frees up your laptop to do your DJing with. And that for me is unbelievable, because you're going to have a hard time finding any laptop for $600 that is going to give you as good streaming performance as this device. So if you only have one laptop, you're looking to spend money, and you've got HDMI cameras, and that's the other thing as well. This is your capture card. If you want to buy a single capture card for something like a GoPro, that's going to cost you, in general, at least $100. You've got two cameras you want to feed into your computer for streaming, that's going to cost you over $200. And the basic ATEM Mini is $300. So that's where the value really starts to come in. Like, that's why I bought the Mini, because for me, it just made sense. I already have cameras. If you don't have cameras with HDMIs, the cheapest, like a used GoPro, is going to be a couple of $100. So it soon starts to add up once you get to one camera, two cameras, add them on. There's one other thing that I've got to mention, which is the audio delay. The nature of the beast is that HDMI, it's not really kind of a professional level connection. It's not designed for low latency. So there will always be an element of delay brought in by sending something, video, through HDMI. And it's about 5 frames or something like that for what I've been doing. About 250 milliseconds is what I've ended up settling on as a, that's what I'm getting. Now, if you're feeding into OBS or something from the Mini or from the Pro over the USB as a webcam, you can of course dial in delay compensation in the, you can delay the audio to match the video. And that works absolutely fine. It really does. But if you're streaming directly from the ATEM Mini Pro, and you're feeding your audio in through a line input, then that is going to be ahead of the video. And so there are a couple of ways around it, 2 or 3 really. You can either feed audio through an HDMI source, so like through your laptop or through one of your cameras. The Blackmagic cameras, I think, have line level inputs on there. One of my Panasonic cameras has a line level input, so you can feed in through the HDMI directly. Or you can add a small little hardware delay box. I found one from CYP, cost me about $40 or thereabouts, dialed in 250 milliseconds, that worked perfectly, and it's consistent every time. So that's the one that I've ended up using. You can also buy something like a feedback destroyer from Behringer, or certain like digital mixers. You can just delay the audio by a certain fixed amount of milliseconds, and that will do it. But it's worth being aware of is that if you are planning to go fully standalone without a computer involved, then you will need to find a way to get that audio in sync, because there is no audio delay. The actual audio control is really kind of deep. Like, this is basically similar to what you get in Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve editing program and color correction program. This is like the Fairlight Audio, I think it's called, and you've got full control. You've got, you know, gain control for each one. You can turn them on or off from the software or from the hardware. You've got pan control. You've also got an EQ for each channel, and you've got dynamics as well. So you've got expander, gate, compressor, and limiter you can add on there. When I'm doing it, I'm generally using a mixer in the first place, so I tend to just run into the line input, and then on the master, I'll just throw a limiter on there to make sure I'm not exceeding anything. But yeah, the audio side of it is great. The one thing it's missing is an ability to delay audio from the line inputs, rather than, you know, so they match up with the HDMIs. But the actual audio, yeah, it's great quality as well. It works very, very well. I would just love to see a delay added in there. There are workarounds, but it's something to keep in mind. So yeah, that's it really. That's the two products. I am fully on board with this. I wasn't sure I would be on board with the live streaming direct from the box, but actually it is my way of doing it. That's how I prefer doing it. If you are really getting into Twitch and you're getting into all the overlays, well, not so much the overlays, but like the alerts and stuff where loads of things pop in when someone does a sub and that kind of stuff, there's not really very many simple ways to do that with one of these straight from the box. Like, if you're running into software, of course, you can do it there in OBS or whatever your software of choice is. But yeah, I just wanted to share these with you. I'm sorry it's been long. Believe me, this is not as long as the previous attempts have been at doing this video, but I am fully sold. This, for me, suits my DJ mentality all day. It just really sits right with me, and I love the fact that however you do it, it takes stress off your computer, because no one likes watching that CPU meter go up in OBS. That's not a great place to be when you're trying to do streams and engage with people in these times. So, and for me as well, you know, I'm seeing the streaming thing as a long-term play. Like, I'm all about it right now. You know, Mixcloud as a platform, it's not the greatest right now, but it's got a lot of promise and it's fully licensed. So, you know, there will be DJ streaming going on into the future, even once we're through this current situation the world is in, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later. So yeah, let us know what you think about this setup. You know, would this suit you? Is it going to work for you? Have you got the kind of cameras to use with this? Have you got any experience with these? If you have, do let us know down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks and product reviews. I'll see you soon.